So, hello everyone, and welcome to my little presentation. I would like to tell you guys a little bit about what goes into designing GalaCon. I have been a part of the design team of GalaCon since 2018, and we really didn't have a team structure back then. It was mostly just one guy who was kind of tangentially communicating with the organizers a little bit, and they decided on the theme, and he would just like, oh, this year the theme is movies, just draw some movie references in your posters, things like that. So when I joined, it was me and one more person who was also accepted. And at the time, like now having two artists is kind of unthinkable because we do a lot of work. We're currently 4 people, and we're going to be, it's still not quite enough, but we do also design more things these days. So now the GalaCon is basically designed from the art point of things by a team of people, of which I am leading. And let's just kind of jump into the team itself, because I would like to give everyone a nice little shout out. So these are the amazing people, at least. So this also includes a few people who aren't designing for GalaCon, but are designing for the Free Encore. One person who really isn't working with us currently, but for the most part, you can see that Perry is there, Light is there, I'm there, and Zita is there. And I will introduce every one of these amazing souls. But before we jump into that, what does the art team do then? So there's a couple of things. For one, and we will get into that a little bit later, but one of the things that the design team does is coming up with the theme these days. So I will show you a little bit of the process of how the theme is decided, especially since this year's theme seems to be very beloved, and it really warms our hearts and makes us very happy. So we decide on the theme, and we design the canny that comes with that theme. This year it's the one with the leg bracers, leg warmers, the bracers, and the hair braids. We design things for the social media and websites. It's one of the first things that comes out in that theme is, this is actually the website background, and we are just kind of using it on other things too. But like first and foremost, it was the website background. We also design profile pictures for social media and banners and everything kind of beginning in that theme. And those are the first things that come out in that theme. Finally, of course, it's venue decoration. Not finally, but there's one more, but venue decoration. So those would be banners and flags and just kind of the little things. There is a separate team of people that works kind of not directly with us, who does things like the longboat in the main hall. Really incredible work, and they kind of hand-painted that, I believe. So they don't vote on the theme, but they get what we tell them at the end, and then they get a budget and they work out some beautiful magic with that. And of course, the one that's probably the most known is merchandise. So that would be any t-shirts, mugs, posters, prints, keychains, things like that. And all of these are divided among artists by using, well, in our case, it's Trello. We start with having a column of unassigned tasks that need to be done this year, and the artists just drag the task over to their little window, to their little row, column, and then they can work on it. It comes with a notification of when we need to have it finished. We are all kind of procrastinators, so we all finish at the very last minute. And I also need to work on that, given the fact that I still design the majority of things, and we might have had more things to show you guys if I worked a little faster. But it's all really, really cool things that these people are able to bring. So now let's jump into the actual members, and I will just show you some of their works and what where you can find them. So the first to mention would be light. And here are some works in progress because we wanted to combine this also with a little bit of a show of how are things getting made. So this one is interesting because here you can see that the very first concept sketch shows, this was from a poster from last year, the 80s theme, 80s, 90s disco theme, where she first outlined the composition and she usually at this point shares it with the rest of the team, and we kind of just like usually just gush at each other about how cool it is and how cute it is. And
Also.
yes, and then she just like worked out the details to an incredible level like this, and eventually it was painted with watercolors, which is her tool of trade. So here are just some links where you can find her, and she's also selling here at GalaCon this year, as basically every year. So the next artist would be Chita Gonzita, and she has been a part of this team for a very long time, kind of as long as I have, because she was, at the beginning, before we didn't have a team structure, she was just kind of an occasional artist where it was like, oh, maybe you can do this for us quickly. The thing about her style is that she draws in the show style really well. So most of the time, probably all of the time, when you see something designed by us these days that is done in the show style, such as the mug, this is a work in progress of that, it's done by Zita. And the first image is a work in progress of the venue flag that should be waving outside, I believe. She also did the one from last year, so she's kind of always doing the flag the past few years. And here's where you can find her. She's also selling here this year, so be sure to stop by and tell her that she's very cool. And don't tell her Patch sent you, tell her that a little goblin sent you, and then she will wonder about it.
Okay.
Next person that I want to introduce, even though she probably doesn't need a lot of introduction, is Perry Del Toro. I don't know how well known it is, but she is an artist and she draws for GalaCon quite a bit. She designed all of the tickets that you guys are all wearing this year. And she also shared some of those works in progress with us where she outlined what the composition would be. And she kind of decided which will be what reference. For example, what we have here is a nice little How to Train Your Dragon, because one of the staff members has a OC of a dragon, so it was just right there. And then the other one was from StarCraft, like something Blizzard.
That's Blizzard.
Yeah, something. So she was also using like Norse god references, but also just kind of placing the characters into funny little situations. And I colored it and shaded it, but I mean, the line work is like the cool stuff, right? And here is where you can find her. Again, she's moderating, so you will probably see her around a lot, but she does have a vendor table, so I would definitely recommend stopping by and checking her out. So, now I will just quickly mention myself because I exist. And here is a little work in progress that I thought was kind of interesting, because this is from the comic that can be seen in the guide. And this was like towards the beginning. This was only about like 40 hours of work in. I'm very inefficient, so this shouldn't have taken 40 hours, but there we are. But yeah, I basically started off with a general concept of what the story should be like and came up with the dialogue and how things would flow from panel to panel. It's interesting because there is a lot of like science that goes into, or like not science, but there's like rules of framing and of pacing in comics. And it's one of those things where people don't talk about it as much as like in TV and in movies, show. So there was a lot of like planning that went into that, and I hope it kind of shows. And here are just some socials, just so that I also have a vendor table, but it's kind of at the info desk and I'm not there all of the time. But if you want to see some of the thingies that I designed for not GalaCon but for myself, there is an option to see. So now let's get into the theme. This is kind of probably going to be the more interesting part. So the theme is basically, so we need to come up with something new every year, and it's always a little bit scary because I mean, we're getting better at coming up with ideas and we like know kind of what is good to do, but at the end of the day, each year that we do a theme, it's like, well, I can't do that theme again. Or like, at least we need to do it differently next time. And so I'm really sad that we are now used up our Vikings, and that's kind of it, I guess, for now. But there is a couple of things that needs to be taken into consideration when we're deciding on the theme. There's a lot of things. I don't know if it kind of seems like arbitrary, but there are a couple of things that have ruled out certain potential themes. So one of the rules is that it needs to have a recognizable, established aesthetic that is tied to it. So for example, Viking or futurism, where we did like in 2019, or in 2022 when we had the medieval magic, which was a little similar to this one, but still it was like, it had a, like, this has a Nordic spin to it, so there is obviously a difference. So it needs to be something that can be referenced in visual arts and easily recognizable. This is the year of Vikings. Next thing that we need to watch out for is, or we really like to watch out for, because we are all fans of things here, not just My Little Pony. So we always try to look for media that already exists within that aesthetic. And ideally it can be then referenced in the artworks that come out of it. So for example, the volunteers among us here today are wearing t-shirts that has a little Skyrim spin on it. And there's also the How to Train Your Dragon stuff and the Blizzard stuff. So all of this is stuff that will make fans who are familiar happy, and if they're not familiar, I mean, they're still looking at a pretty artwork, so, you know, no harm done. So next one is a little more of an obscure one, but it is something that we need to watch out for, because we have been doing the themed musical theme of GalaCon for a few years now at the opening, and we need to be always able to come up with an aesthetic that a musical artist can work with. If we already have some kind of films or like games that are tied to that aesthetic, then that makes it pretty easy, because you just look at the music that appeared in that and you can draw inspiration from that. Obviously with Vikings we were basically going for bagpipes and horns and thrones singing honey in the animation and things like that. And finally, there is the consideration of the overall storyline. And this is actually one of the things that I come up with at the very beginning of the concept where the thing is pitched. I basically say to myself, okay, so how can we make it to the point where like there's the comic that tells a little story, and then there's the animation that tells a little story. The idea is that they are tied together, and it needs to be something about Kani looking for how to do GalaCon this year, or looking for ideas, or like, oh, she hopped into a time machine and traveled to medieval ages, and then following year she like went to space and like fought aliens. We had like themes like that were kind of out there. And yeah, so basically I pitched this theme with the idea of, what if Kanye really didn't know how to make it wild anymore, and then she just like, someone thinks of the Vikings and they're like, well, they're pretty wild. It's a different kind of wild, but wild it is. So this is the story that I always pitched to the team and to the animators and to the musicians along with the pictures that were made. So yes, the theme, as I mentioned, is chosen by the art team, who I already introduced. And the first stage would be, of course, coming up with a concept. Now, this also includes the aesthetic. So, for example, I was kind of at a loss this year, so I was just kind of browsing aesthetics wiki. And I was like thinking, yeah, this is actually perfect. Like, I had specifically in my head the checkboxes, like, okay, it needs to have an aesthetic that's tied to it. Like in enough media, it needs to have some kind of a music idea behind it. And so when we do that, we also at that stage already come up with a few pictures. And at that stage we don't have to like necessarily draw them ourselves. But for example, in 2019, I actually did do that, and I had this idea of robotics and futurism, and I drew how the different three characters would kind of interact with that environment. And this picture never ended up making it into any of the merchandise, so I kind of wanted to show it. It exists, it's revealed now, it's not even finished, it's just hard shading, but it's out there now. And I mean, the little guy actually ended up making it into the animation. He was a bit of a character. If you were here in 2019, you might recall him. And the next one would be what I want to show for this year is this little Kenny that ended up being shaded and being the main profile picture of this year's event. And at this stage, I have to say that the concept kind of then is reworked and developed into the actual Kanye redesign that I mentioned that we do. So I first had a sketch version of this that I wasn't able to find, but there was a sketch version, and that was for the concept. And then I turned the concept into the actual Kanye that I pitched to the team. So next thing would be coming up with a mood board. And I'm not going to lie, the mood boards that we have used, I've just kind of, again, found things online, found finished mood boards online. It doesn't have to like fulfill every item on the mood board, but it's like you just want to have an idea of the colors that you're going to be going for and the items that you're going to be depicting. This was basically the live version of the disco ball, of the disco room that was in last year's pictures, like the last year's version of the website. So for this year, I found some mood boards like this. I added a couple of things to it, but this was already pre-made. I do not own this mood board, but I liked it. And I added a little color palette at the top where you can see, okay, so these are the colors that I would like to go for. I'm actually seeing that the yellow doesn't even appear in that version, but yellow ended up being a pretty prominent one for the Aurora Borealis that we included in our material. And that was a pretty big one because we wanted to work with the atmosphere and the mystique that comes with beautiful scenery like this. So once we're done with the mood board, I pitch it to the art team, and I usually tend to have at least one more theme in the works that can also be pitched to the art team, because it has happened in the past where I had two themes. Personally, was kind of a bigger fan of one of them, but this is something that the whole art team is concerned about because for a year they're going to be drawing things in that aesthetic and they need to feel like there's something there. So I pitched those two themes to them, and they actually preferred the other theme, so we ended up going with that one. And it went over really well. I was extremely happy with the results. So it's not really a vote per se, it's just kind of people talking in a chat, and it's like, okay, I think that we are all feeling this theme. Now at this point, it's already decided, I take the silver platter with the theme and I throw it on the table of the GalaCon organization team and tell them, like, learn to live with it, this is what we're doing. In the past, it used to be that, again, like I mentioned, the theme was decided by the staff, but we headbutted over that because it's, of course, they are the main organizers and we shouldn't give them something that's like horrible, but we have good intentions, we are doing our best, and they are not the ones, again, drawing for a year in that particular aesthetic. So, I mean, the people have always managed to make the best of it, and the theme kind of takes on a life of its own. So after this is done and the concept is basically approved, this is also the point when I already have the concept image of the redesign of Honey and the mood boards and possibly already working on the website. And this is when we come with it to the animation people and the people who are in charge of the song. So we send all of those visuals to them, we even hop on a call with them, and we tell them this little story of what I mentioned, that, oh, Kani's thinking what she should do, how to make it wilder. We give them that. Especially the animation people are going to want to know, because they are going to be the most concerned with what the story actually is. Now, even though this is decided and the animation people are working on it, I don't force the storyline that I came up with on them, and they are like free to write the script if they want. But I also offer it in case they don't want to feel just like, why do I have to do everything? I'm like, I can storyboard it. I have storyboarded in the past. I don't think I'm that good at it, but if the animation people are more comfortable working like that, then that is absolutely, basically as much freedom as they wish for. In this case, the WW brothers wrote the whole thing. They basically communicated with the voice actors, they wrote the script, and they came up with the jokes, really good ones. And yeah, they were like happy working like that. So the next thing that happens around like kind of at the same time, I mean it's a smaller project so probably later, but the theme song is like adapted to it, and this is going to be done by, like, we had different people do it, and this year it was J. Crow who took the theme and did this amazing version of it. You can still hear the song in there, but it's like bagpipes and horns, and it's really awesome. So yeah, once that is done, we basically have our material for the event itself, and the animation is definitely the part that takes the longest, because we pitch it to the animators. Like, just to give an idea, this whole deciding on a theme thing happens around like October-ish. Like, that's already a little late because we're trying to have a website go live around that time already. So it's like September, October is when this is being decided. October, November is when the animation is kind of beginning. Of course, depending on the specific animators. If they felt like they didn't need that much time, they can start later, but animation takes a lot of time, we all know that. So that is all still happening within the same year that the current GalaCon happened. I already right now have to be thinking about what we do next year. And it's fine, I mean, I enjoy it, but you know, how to make it wilder next year makes you wonder. So the last thing that I want to show you from works in progress and from the back end of things is just one of the things that we were sent by the animators. They basically gave us a few animatics. They, I think, showed us the script, and they just kind of showed us what the style, the final style would look like, a vertical slice kind of thing, where it's like, so this is like these 5 seconds are what the whole animation is kind of going for. So here is an early version of the animation that I was given the permission to share with you guys.
Perfection.
Very refreshing. Come out, Sunny. How was the sack?
It was cramped. Eyes. The feet. Okay. Where are we?
Isn't it obvious? We're in Germany!
The sheep was the way stop.
Just look at these typical German northern lights. Sunny! Where's your German spirit?
Oh, sorry. So, another topic. Why did you duck me?
Oh, you mean the recruiting? Well, I need a sidekick for my quest.
What quest?
Winter is coming. We have to find something that will get the Brony fandom through it, and all winters to come.
And what would that be?
A legendary, mystical thing.
Ah, that one.
In order to reach it, we'll need to take this house spot. Look, a Viking! you to do.
Oh, that was so fun.
Dwell on the past. Look ahead towards your future. We can make it better.
I would prefer if you take care of that rock instead.
Tomato, tomato. I'll split it in two.
You have lost your axe.
With the power of my mind, I can call it back. Video games always lie to me. A German!
Phew, thank Odin. He is friendly.
Oh, Sandy, all Germans are. Maybe he can help us. Oh, great frost giant! Where do we find what will get the Brony fandom through all winters to come? Oh, of course! Oh, doll, why didn't I think of that? Welcome to GalaCon 2024! Like always, we have a lot of exciting guests and panels for you, which have conveniently been printed on this giant's back.
Yeah. So you can see that's the original concept. There was a tiny change at the end, but this was, yeah, my computer died since I was done with the presentation. Good timing, very. So, yeah, as you can see, there was a little bit of a change at the end, but the whole thing was just an animatic, but already very accurate to how the final product turned out. And this is kind of the thing where even though we came up with the theme, we gave them the summary of the concept and the story, but they did their thing with it. And then after seeing the animatic, that's when the comic was done according to that to be directly taking place before it. So the comic kind of bent a little bit to how the animation went. So yeah, this is basically our process. I think I've kind of gone over most things. But I would like to also give you guys a chance if you have any questions or are curious about anything, then feel free to shoot them my way because I think that this is all really, really interesting stuff. I do apologize for the dying computer. I had it on a charger earlier today, but I guess I was working on this presentation for a couple of hours, so it died in the meantime.
What's your favorite part of this process during the year?
My favorite part, I think, when it's done.
That's my answer.
Well, I do enjoy the moment where we have a theme thought up, because it's really stressful during the coming up with the theme, and when we still don't know are we going to figure this out, are we going to come up with something good. But then the moment when we have the theme, the artists are happy with it and approved of it, and the team is happy and the animators are kind of no. But the actual work isn't starting yet, so you just get to think about how nice it will be when I get to it eventually. So yeah, aside from the moment when everything is done, I do enjoy the moment when I have come up with an idea and that's when I'm feeling motivated to start working on it. Yes.
Conservatively, how many hours has your team put into all of the art combined over the year?
Over 1 year, how much hours do they put in? So
Way too much.
that is, yeah, that's gonna be, I'm pretty sure that's going to be around 1,000, I think so, yeah. Like, it could be like 1,000 and up. Because we had a lot of, so like every artist has a bit of a different MO. I think I'm kind of ruining that number a little bit because just the dumb comic was 150 hours.
But it looks amazing.
It was like fun to work on, and it was again one of those like, oh, I finally know what to do, like I'm feeling motivated, and then it just kind of drains your soul over time. But that's a me problem because I'm so inefficient. The other artists, I'm sure that they put like up to 20 hours into some pieces. Like the watercolor painting that Light does cannot be a quick process, I cannot imagine. So I think that it's going to be probably at least 1,000 and possibly like a lot more than that.
So,
Very much impressive.
How many pictures come together in the end?
How many pictures? Like how many different designs?
How many artworks
drawings?
from all of the artists?
I think it's going to be like 20, 30, 40. I know that that's like a double of the first guess, but it's kind of hard to put it in together with my mind. There's also the fact that sometimes you have one design and you reuse it for multiple things. So for example, the goodie bags this year are more detailed and with some other additions design of the enamel pin. So it's kind of like, would you consider that a separate one or a different one in cases like that? But it's a couple dozen designs. But yes?
Some of the main staff has their OCs on the convention guide pages or the tickets sometimes. How do you decide who goes where, or do they just call dibs or have a lottery or something?
Sometimes it's, so there were times when we asked the staff what they would like, but these days in the name of getting things kind of off the ground, because the people are willing to actually talk about it for hours and just kind of like, oh no, I want to be on this ticket tier, I don't want to be with him. Well, I don't know if I can think of, no, I can probably think of one case like that. Yeah. I mean, there's bickering, it's not like we hate each other, but yeah, people, and sometimes it's like, oh, why does this person get to be on a Skyrim reference? I want the Skyrim reference.
oh yeah.
So usually it's kind of the artist decides with a little bit of input. When Perry was designing it, she kind of asked us, who in your team has this like kind of dad energy, just kind of looks over everyone and is a rock to lean on? And then she's like, okay, then he will be done as, was it Thor?
No, the one that June inside.
Yeah.
That was the big guy from Wiki,
Yeah.
the Viking, but I don't know his name.
Oh, I thought it was like a specific, like mystical character.
No.
Yeah, so for example, like that. And sometimes we do kind of do it based on interests, because if we're like, oh, I know this member is like super into a game, then it's like we will try to make that happen for them. What do you want to ask?
Yeah, so earlier you were talking about pitching the themes, the ideas for themes to the rest of the art team.
Yes.
And you said that once you proposed two ideas and one was voted over the other, but you preferred the first one. So can you elaborate on this specific example?
So, okay, so we had last year, there was an idea for a design, and we will probably come back to it for next year with a little bit of a, like, we will probably twist it a little bit and do it a little differently than the original concept was. But my specific idea was something that is probably in a different way going to happen next year. And the other idea was with the 80s. And I was kind of thinking, we kind of did 80s a little bit for the first con line, but then again, a con line isn't the real con, and we had like a handful of designs and in general and of goodies compared to a real IRL convention. So I had a reason to be a little less into that design, but it's like I wouldn't propose it if I absolutely hated it either. So when the artists were like, oh no, I actually really dig the 80s thing, we can have a lot of fun with that. Usually when you pitch it to the arts team, they're like, oh, I can think of a volunteer shirt with that like concept, like what we can do for that, or like, oh, I think like for a banner we can draw a beautiful scene with Aurora Borealis. Yeah, so does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
What's your timeline like? When do you start working on the next year, and when are the how tight are the deadlines towards the?
The deadlines are pretty like open, but most artists tend to start shortly before the deadlines. So we basically have a concept of the theme worked out in, like I mentioned, in September. And I usually am thinking already of an upcoming year at the convention, like of the previous year. But sometimes I'm not really coming up with anything, so I just try to not think about it. But sometimes, like today, I've been just walking around and like, yeah, I could see how we could do this for the next theme. And so yeah, if I can't come up with something during the convention, I will just brainstorm ideas with the arts team. Even we've also done that. And then by the end of the summer, we try to have a rough idea. And at that point, I make the board that you could see, and with the list of some of the items. It's not going to be complete because sometimes during the year I'm like, oh, we could do an extra button, so I just edit. I notify the team that there's one more thing added, and then one of them can drag the task over to their column. Also, a thing that I actually wanted to mention but I forgot is that GalaCon is like a pretty tightly run ship, so we can't really afford to do a lot. But we really, like, one of the big changes that has happened since the beginning of the convention is that we pay the artists for their work. And it's, yeah, like, I think this is really good. We obviously tell them that we probably can't afford as much as they would normally charge by a private customer, but if this is okay with them, then we are happy to, like, give them this compensation, and then it's going to be based on the complexity of the task. So there's also like a little bit of incentive to like consider taking on a task if you think that you're going to, like, it's we try to be like grateful customers with the artists. That was like not related to your question, but I wanted to mention that. Yeah, so like they know it already early in the year, like, oh, I know already in October that I'll be doing the banner, but I probably end up doing it a little later anyway. The final deadline for things like t-shirts is like a month before the convention. For things like a banner, it's maybe 3 weeks before the convention, and for posters, it can be 2 weeks before the convention. So there is like a lot of time, and like I mentioned, with people having like 5 to 10 artworks to do each, it's like usually we try to make sure that people actually have the ability to like take tasks away and then someone else like grabs it. Yeah. Anyone else wondering about anything? Yes?
I really like the different theme songs. Is there a way to listen to them again? Because I don't think they're on YouTube already.
Usually they are uploaded. Usually when you like go to the VOD test them, but I can like tell the stuff that we maybe uploaded as a separate video if there's interest.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this was the chairman speaking. So
hello, I'm the chairman.
yes, the chairman is here seeing if I get kicked out for a bad panel or if I get to stay another day.
No, I'm also her assistant.
Yes, so yeah, I mean, I can imagine that they're going to try and upload this year's version, probably. It's like the artists themselves might do it. In this case, it would be Jikro, if they decide to do so. Like, they definitely would have the first rights to upload the theme song, I believe.
You
Yes?
mentioned that the comic took you like 150 hours. How much of that time was just researching the architecture of the building?
Yeah, that's a thing with me. So, I used the 360 view thing that the Burgerzentrum has on their website, so I was able to like take screen grabs from specific angles and use those to reference for the comic. And there, I even had the points, like these are things that people aren't going to notice, but they would just bug me. There were points where Wachmann alone appeared in one panel and then in the next they're together. So I'm like, that would be a slightly different angle of the environment around them. So I actually redo everything. I don't even copy paste it just because it's like, it's going to be a slightly different camera angle. And then at the beginning of this convention, I was actually walking around with the book, walking around the places that I depicted in the comic, and I'm like, I did this inaccurate. There's more chairs in the main hall. Yeah, the chairs. I had a thing with, like, I had such a freak out with the chairs. Jeez. But I think it's like accurate enough. People seem to be able to tell where each scene is meant to take place. Also, the placement of the info desk is not based on facts, it's based on where I wish the desk could be placed but can't due to the venue making decisions. So there's a little bit of wishful fulfillment in there. So, did anyone else have anything in mind? Of course, if you also come up with something that you're curious about, I'm really happy to share this because I personally find the way that we have developed our MO really fascinating, and I would be happy to share it because it's like there's so much happens behind the scenes, and it just comes out being something that people might not even notice or think about, like what goes into deciding on a theme or how would the artists decide who does what. So I'm always really happy to talk about it. And I will be running around the convention during the weekend, so if anyone has a question or a comment, you can definitely come up. Thank you so much for your attention today.